You pick up your phone to check a message, and suddenly it's been 45 minutes of you scrolling down a TikTok rabbit hole. And yet 3 minutes into trying to study, your brain is begging for you to give up and take a break. What if I told you that this is genuinely not your fault? And even better, you can try and rewire your brain to make studying just as addictive as social media. Hi, I'm Erin, I'm a study talker, study tuber, and I like to make a lot of content about studying. Funnily enough, I also really enjoy studying. It would be a bit of a terrible gig if I didn't. But I've not always been this way, and I used to find studying something that was quite dull. But I've managed to rewire my brain to genuinely find it so fun, so interesting, and when I start studying, I want to study more and more, almost like how when you go on TikTok you want to scroll further and further down. So we're going to take a look at how you can do the same. And by the end of this video, you're going to have a 3-step, scientifically backed strategy that is going to help you make studying something that you actually want to do. So what makes social media so addictive to us? Well, it's because we get these sort of dopamine-fueled feedback loops where we're scrolling and we don't know when we're going to get this next boost of dopamine. Not every single video is going to make you laugh or make you enjoy what you're actually seeing. I can't speak. But you kind of get this intermittent dopamine release in your brain, and that makes you really compulsive. That makes you want to scroll further and further because you don't know when you're next going to get that dopamine hit. And it's very similar patterns that you see in the brains of people who have an addiction that's not social media. The problem with traditional study techniques is that you don't get this same dopamine hit, and you don't get it at these sort of unpredictable stages, because studying is very predictable. It's very monotonous. You know what you're doing and you do it, and you know what happens next, and then you proceed, and your brain is tired and bored of that because it knows what's going to happen. You wouldn't watch a movie if you knew the ending. Importantly, studying also requires delayed gratification. You only reap the rewards come exam season. Throughout the rest of the year, your brain has got to latch on to this promise of gratification months and months in advance. And you can see how that's something that really is quite demotivating, because you're not getting that instant reward, that instant dopamine hit that you get when you scroll on social media on your phone. So how are we going to rewire the process? Step 1, we are going to introduce a reward system. Now, I know a lot of people talk about rewarding yourself for studying or gamifying the study process, but they never really tell you what that means. So I'm going to break it down to you. It means that you break down your study sessions into little micro sessions and give yourself micro rewards for each of these like micro study periods. So for example, I might have 300 flashcards to go through. If I sit down and go, I have 300 flashcards to go through and I am going to get up when I've done all 300, I am going to feel miserable. And my brain is going to switch off about flashcard 25. And we can't be having that. So what you're going to do is break it down into manageable chunks. I might look at 20 flashcards at a time. And after each 20 flashcards, I'm going to do something. I am going to perhaps allow myself to look at 2 videos on TikTok. I might allow myself to go and get some treats. Whatever it is, I'm going to break it up and I'm going to have these little rewards incrementally so that I'm constantly motivated to keep going. At the same time, I'm going to mix things up. I might not do my flashcards at my desk. I might go and do them on the treadmill. And that is a different environment, a different pace, something that sort of makes the studying all of a sudden a little bit more interesting. You might want to go to a library and try and stay there for longer than a friend. You might want to go to a cafe and just enjoy the sort of atmosphere whilst you're getting your studying done. If you can train yourself into believing that actually studying is not something that I have to do just stuck at my desk that's really boring and dull and I hate it, but if you can do it in lots of different places, in lots of nice environments, just being surrounded by a different space can make a world of difference. And that paves the way into step 2, which is to make your studying visually stimulating. It has been shown that if you can actually create these sort of visuals and make things more than just pen on paper, it's going to increase your memory retention, but also increase your ability to stay focused for long periods of time, which is exactly what you need whilst you're studying. So whether this is something such as attaching images to flashcards on flashcard apps, whether it's using very visual techniques such as mind mapping, blurting, or getting out a whiteboard and trying to map out an entire subject or your full topic, or trying to, put a keyword in the middle and think of absolutely everything you possibly can that relates to that keyword around the edges. All of these things are going to be much more interesting study techniques. And because of the fact that you're physically particularly with the whiteboard technique, you're physically stood up, you're writing on this whiteboard, and you're creating these neural pathways that are going to be reinforced over and over again. Whereas if you're just sat at your desk and you're reading through a textbook, no wonder you're getting bored. Step number 3, you want to introduce some level of unpredictability. You want something that is mimicking the variable dopamine hits that you're getting as you're scrolling through social media. A really interesting way to do this is to do something where you're sort of blind studying. And what I mean by blind studying is you don't have a predefined plan, which is contrary to a lot of advice that I do give, but this is the exception that I will make. For example, you're going to make an Excel spreadsheet and you're going to write down every single topic in every single subject that you need to revise. And then you can put that into some sort of spinner wheel or some random number generator, and it's going to randomly assign a study task. So every time you sit down to study, you're going to click, you're going to get a random subject, a random topic, and that is what you're going to study. And once you get in the habit of doing this, it becomes a lot easier actually for you to study those harder topics, because a lot of us, a lot of the time, will procrastinate doing really hard things because we know it's a hard topic and we could do this easier topic. And that's going to make us feel better because we're better at it and we're going to get more questions right. And we end up pushing these harder ones further and further down the road. Whereas if you're doing things very randomly, if you're introducing this unpredictability, for example, some sort of study roulette, then you're forcing yourself to actually act on these harder tasks, and you're going to be able to revise everything a lot more effectively because you're splitting your time between every single subject rather than over concentrating on those things that you already know. Alongside this, you can also transform your environment. Besides going into different places, if you do have one place, for example, your desk, where you're going to be doing your past papers, for example, you want to be doing them in a controlled environment, or you're going to be writing practice essays, make this an environment that is purely for studying. Get rid of everything. Just have what you need in front of you, pen and paper and a question book. If you're the kind of person who's going to get immensely distracted by having your questions on your iPad or your laptop, print them off and have them in paper form just as you would in an exam. Doing these things, they are going to make studying so much better because you're not having the crossover. A lot of the time, what happens is you're studying and you have your phone next to you, and it's so tempting to go and scroll, and you get this dopamine hit from scrolling on TikTok, so that then when you go back to your work, it looks infinitely more boring in comparison. Yes, it'll still be boring if you don't have the TikTok on the side, but if you don't have that to compare it to, it'll be slightly less boring. And that's what allows you to keep the focus going. So let's recap. What are you going to be doing? You're going to be breaking down your work into micro chunks, giving yourself rewards after each section. You're going to be using visual stimulation, and you're going to try and introduce some unpredictability into your studying. And you're going to change your environment, you're going to shape it in the same way that an algorithm on social media will be shaping your feed. You need to remember that social media isn't this all-powerful thing. It works because of biological processes that are happening inside your brain. And you can use those same processes to hack studying, to make that something that you genuinely enjoy and are just as addicted to.